All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I want to start by thanking our partners that are with us today. Councilman Mark Conway, Chair of the City Council's Public Safety and Government Operations Committee, a role I know a little bit about, sir. Deputy Commissioner Sullivan from the Baltimore Police Department, our City Solicitor, Ebony Thompson, Chris Brown, President of Brady Campaign to End Gun Violence, Dr. Joseph Saccharin, the Director of Emergency General Surgery at Johns Hopkins Medicine. And I also want to recognize our partners at Everytown for Gun Safety, Mayors Against Illegal Guns, and Mom for that demand action for their tireless commitment to making our community safer places for our residents to live, work, and grow up without the threat of gun violence. We all know that ghost guns continue to be a huge challenge for Baltimore City. They are a growing menace to the people of Baltimore and, quite frankly, to residents across the country. The number of ghost guns we are seeing on our streets and in the hands of violent criminals is growing continuously. From 128 ghost guns in 2020 that we seized and recovered to 352 last year, and already 187 here in 2022. As long as people who are not legally allowed to possess a firearm, young people, known violent offenders, and gun traffickers have the opportunity to obtain and build these tools of death and destruction and violence, we will not be able to build the safer future for Baltimore that we all want to see. And these weapons will continue to be used in crimes that tear loved ones away from their families and traumatize our communities. And I've said time and time again that firearms that do not have serial numbers and or registration have no place in Baltimore City, and dare I say, in the United States of America. And I want to be clear that it should not be easier to purchase a ghost gun. That is, it is for me to buy my allergy medicine at CVS or to go get a used car. Quite frankly, if a young person can't drink or buy alcohol from a liquor store, if they can't rent a car, they shouldn't be able to go online and buy a ghost gun. Takedowns, and we will continue to do everything in our power to end the menace of ghost guns that threaten our residents' safety. Takedowns alone are not enough. Legislation alone is not enough. We have to crack down on the companies that are profiting off the destruction and death within our communities. This is why we are gathered here today to announce that the city of Baltimore will be filing a lawsuit against Polymer 80, the nation's largest ghost gun manufacturer, to stop the proliferation of ghost guns. This company, through their business model, is intentionally undermining state and federal firearms laws by designing, manufacturing, selling, and providing ghost gun kits and parts to buyers who do not undergo a background check and are flooding our city with these untraceable, unserialized firearms. And we will hold them accountable, because I think we all can agree that enough is enough. We know that the majority of the weapons used in crimes in Baltimore City come from outside of the city and are not legally purchased firearms, weapons that enable the high levels of gun violence that have continued to plague our city for far too long. We will not be able to build a safer Baltimore without cracking down on the illegal gun trade with every single tool at our disposal. The efforts we are talking about today are in a direct alignment with my office partnership with Everytown for Gun Safety on our first of its kind data portal, which provides a near real-time view for our city's crime gun data, allowing Baltimore City to better hold gun traffickers and straw purchasers accountable for their role in fueling the violence epidemic, as well as our support for the state's ghost gun ban, which went into effect today. We are sending a clear message and committing to stemming the tide of ghost guns that continue to plague Baltimore and the entire state of Maryland. Thank you. Now I'd like to turn it over to our partner in this effort, Chris Brown, President, Brady Campaign of the Brady Campaign to End Gun Violence. Chris?
Thank you so much. Good morning. I'm Chris Brown. I'm the president of Brady. Today is a really important day for Brady as a national organization. Of course, Brady, named after Jim and Sarah Brady, is the longest-serving gun violence prevention organization in our country. For over 30 years, we have brought transformative lawsuits on behalf of victims and far too many communities across this country, including this great city of Baltimore, that are ravaged by gun violence, often by the flow of unlawful guns into communities across this country. So today, we are so proud to stand here with the mayor and all of the folks here today to announce our affirmative litigation division that we filed our case today by the affirmative litigation division within Baltimore City's Department of Law, Brady, of course, and the help of Sanford Heisler Sharp LLP, a national public interest law firm. The lawsuit alleges negligence and public nuisance and violations of the Maryland Consumer Protection Act. According to the lawsuit, Polymer 80 intentionally undermines federal and state firearms laws by designing, manufacturing, selling, and providing ghost gun kits and parts to individuals who do not undergo background checks. That's the point. Polymer 80's primary market consists of those who want to evade law enforcement or who cannot obtain a gun from a federal firearms licensee. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the Brady law. Because if you're a federal firearms licensee in this country, under the federal law, you must conduct a background check. You must, before you sell a gun. Polymer 80 has attempted to evade this by buying kits that were not technically regulated under the Gun Control Act of 1968. And therefore, this case is very important because what we have seen over time is a huge increase in Baltimore, as we have in cities across this country, in the sale and the carnage associated with ghost guns. These firearms are flooding Baltimore's streets. Prior to 2018, the Baltimore Police Department had never recovered a ghost gun. Never recovered a ghost gun. To date, the Baltimore Police Department have seized 187 ghost guns in 2022, 31.5% of all gun seizures. This is nearly double the total recovered for the same period last year. In 2021, ghost guns represented 14% of all firearms recovered. Polymer 80 accounts for 91% of the ghost guns, of all ghost guns seized in Baltimore. We will hear from those speaking about the huge impact and toll of gun violence in Baltimore. And I'd like to turn it over next to a speaker who is a close friend of mine, is the vice chair of Brady United Against Gun Violence on our board, and a trauma surgeon at Johns Hopkins, Joe Saccharin. And I just want to say, as I have had conversations leading to the podium today, Brady has been in this fight for so long because we need a complement of solutions to the carnage that we are seeing across our country and in places like Baltimore. It takes better policy at the federal and state level. It takes enforcement of the law, and that's why Brady is on the forefront. We are the national organization that brings these cases every day across this country, and it creates and it requires changing social norms. All of those things are really important, and I'm so proud to be here today, along with our lawyers working on this case, because this is a critical element that is part of the solution and makes enforcement of our laws actually work. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and thanks so much for that, Chris, and thanks to the mayor and the rest of the folks standing behind me today. My name is Joseph Saccharin. I'm a trauma surgeon here in Baltimore. but I also come to this conversation as a survivor of gun violence, as someone that understands what it's like to be on the other side of that curtain. And as we stand here together on the heels of yet another horrific and senseless tragedy in Uvalde, and just before that in Buffalo, of course, we can understand why those mass shootings get a significant proportion of the media's attention. But it's important to recognize that mass shootings are a fraction of the gun violence we are seeing in America. And in fact, every day in cities like Baltimore, we have young brown and black men, high school students, and even pregnant mothers that are being slaughtered on our streets. And those stories have to be told. This is one of the most important public health problems of our time. You know, people always ask me, they say, Joe, well, what's the one thing that we can do? There is no one solution. We were talking about this before we walked up. Tackling this complex public health problem requires us to take a multifaceted approach where we can really tailor our solutions to the specific gun-related injuries. And stopping the unregulated proliferation of ghost guns is one of those steps. You know, I love what I do. I think about the fact that people trust me with their lives. I don't know how anything could be more gratifying. I'm still trying to answer that question. And as I think about what I have to see day in and day out, I think about those moms and those dads that I have to walk into those waiting rooms and explain to them that their child is never coming home again. That's unacceptable. And I cannot just stand here and believe that that is the best that we can do. And here's the reality, is the burden of this problem cannot be on the shoulders of a few. We all have to come off the sidelines of history and be part of the solution to changing the narrative in what's happening in Baltimore and across this country. And that's going to require us breaking down the silos where healthcare systems, public health departments, law enforcement, businesses, and perhaps most importantly, the community, right, are part of the solution. Because we know that people in the community, those that are closest to the struggle, they know what those solutions are. And so we have to really engage this in a very holistic and comprehensive way. You know, we talk about the deaths that happened that continue to plague the city. Let me remind you that last year we had over 700 non-fatal injuries in Baltimore. Some of you might ask, okay, well, you know, they didn't die, what's the big deal there? We know that in communities and cities like Baltimore, the re-injury rate is 40% in 5 years. So those victims are an opportunity and a teachable moment for us to say, hey, let's figure out where the problems are so we can help prevent them from ever coming back and being in this situation again. You know, as good as, I think I am as a trauma surgeon, as incredible I think my multidisciplinary team is, as wonderful as I think my health system is, there is very little that I can do when someone comes in that's shot in the head. The best medical treatment is prevention. So I would just want to implore all of you, like the people that are dying and being injured, these aren't just numbers and statistics. These are human beings. They're part of the fabric of our society. And we have to do better than what we're doing. And we have to support people in the mayor's office and across healthcare systems and across the entire spectrum of sectors to really tackle this and make the community safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saccharin. And normally after someone speaks like that's where I come from, we just say simply amen. Yes, sir. That's what we say. And we know that you are seeing it firsthand. We appreciate what you do every day, but more importantly, your view of understanding how this is a complete picture that we have to tackle. We know that we're seeing more and more ghost guns being used on our streets more than ever before, as you know, and we have to continue to make sure that our police department, as they will hold folks accountable and seize these weapons. And this is a critical undertaking that we are doing, the need to address this proliferation of ghost guns as a part of the larger solutions to solving this disease, this public health issue, as you heard the doctor say, known as gun violence. So last but certainly not least, I want to turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Sullivan to talk more about this issue and what it means for BPD and our officers. Deputy?
So as of today, it's illegal to buy or sell a ghost gun in Maryland. And that's a policy that we have advocated for the past several years, and we're very happy to see that. I'm here today to thank the mayor and Brady and Chris for this lawsuit that's coming forward. It's critically important, and we must see to it that Baltimore 80 and other manufacturers that build these kit guns that are no longer able to put them out on the streets of Baltimore. They're untraceable, and it makes the job of law enforcement much more difficult. This is a chance to hold the nation's largest manufacturer accountable for their contribution to the violence that we see on the streets day in and day out. As the mayor noted, we've already recovered 187 ghost guns this year. I want to thank the men and women of the Baltimore Police Department, because this is hard and inherently dangerous work that they do to take those guns off the street. Those numbers are increasing year after year, and without this type of legislation and this lawsuit, we would see them continue to go up every single year. This lawsuit and new legislation go a long way to support our gun violence prevention strategies, and we look forward to working hard for the citizens of Baltimore to prevent gun violence on the streets. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Sullivan. Thank you so much. And now we will take a few questions.
Mr. Mayor, part of the lawsuit is to recover damages and costs incurred because of ghost guns. Do you have a figure associated with that?
I will let the Deputy Solicitor talk about all legal specifics. Deputy?
Good morning. I think we actually have our solicitor here that actually has the real figures. But go ahead, solicitor.
Now, this is why you have a really good deputy to make sure that she answers the questions that get asked. The damages are very, very substantial. We do not yet have a compilation of exactly what they are. We'll have experts assess that. The damage types range from societal problems that are created right down to the hard cost of cleaning up the mess that Baltimore 80 has created here in the city.
Mr. Solicitor, it seems like there have been some other lawsuits from other cities in the country against this very gun manufacturer. How has that helped in preparing this lawsuit, and what has been learned from those cases? Right.
There have been a substantial number of cases. I don't think any of them have gone to judgment or verdict yet. I could be wrong about that. I don't think so. But certainly the legal theories that they used are things that we readily borrowed. The public nuisance count in particular is an important one. And Maryland has a particularly good common law on public nuisance that should be of assistance to us.
Can you also speak to the prevalence of ghost guns in the recent week or 2 weeks? I mean, what percentage in recent murders have they been present? Can you speak to that?
I'll just start by saying that we recover them consistently throughout the city of Baltimore. I'll let the deputy talk about if we know yet that if we recovered one that's been directly tied. But again, I want to just be mindful that they aren't as easy to trace as you heard many of them in the incidents. But I'll let the deputy talk about that direct. Deputy.
So of the 187 guns that we've recovered this year, roughly 20%, 1/5 almost of those guns have been ghost guns. So, we can break down and get you the numbers specifically over the last time period after this event, but it's significant.
Do you know how many of those 20% have been used in shootings or homicides?
I don't have this year's numbers, but we can definitely get you those after this event.
Another question for the Deputy Commissioner. Could you just speak about how the prevalence of ghost guns, talk about it as being a real challenge for law enforcement. How do those guns being used in crimes make your job, the police department's job, harder? Does it impact the investigations?
Absolutely it does. These are guns that are not serialized, not tracked in any way. It used to be we could track time to crime. So we could say that a gun is purchased and trafficked onto the streets of Baltimore, and from the time it was purchased till the time of the crime, it would give us a good sense of what that gun trafficking pipeline looks like. With ghost guns, we don't know. We have NIBIN, which is a very helpful system that we work with the federal government. If we have unserialized guns, it takes us time to be able to piece that together, and it just makes it more difficult in the investigation.
Deputy Commissioner, since you're still up there, can you talk about Hanover Armory? Is that part of a city police investigation?
We'll talk to that after this. We'll get our PIO to get you the information.
And not just before, sorry, Mackenzie, just before you say, just a note to talk about like the amount of violent crime guns over last 90-day period that we tracked. The BPD has seized 188 violent crime guns. And when you look at through May 22nd, which is the end of that period, we actually have from January 1 through May 22nd seized 294 violent crime guns as compared to 245 last year. Gun seizures themselves, a total 965 versus 854. Sorry.
Just really quickly, we know that the gun laws on the books are pretty restrictive in Maryland and in Baltimore City. If violent criminals are still getting their hands on guns, regardless of how they get it or where they come from, how is suing the manufacturer going to stop it?
Well, I think what you have to understand is that when you think about Maryland's gun laws and the success that we've had on them, what we're going to continue to do is make sure that we're doing this to make sure that these guns, if we win these kind of suits and these folks have to follow the rules and regulations that everyone else has, then guess what? People can't get these guns illegally anymore. But I think, as you heard me say before, Mackenzie, that this is just us. I know that my partners at Mayors Against Illegal Guns, folks, Brady, all these folks are working around the country around this, because this is not just a Baltimore issue. This is an issue for the entire country. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, but we have some of the most backwards and outdated things and rules and regulations that you can imagine. Like I said earlier, if a young person if I can't walk into CVS and just buy Allegra, then someone who's 15, 16, 17, 18 years old shouldn't be able to go on the internet and buy a gun and put it together at home. We can evolve past that. At some point in this country, we have to understand that we're not talking about, you don't hear us talking about taking away people's legal right to own firearms. This is about illegal guns in the hands of people that should not have them, period. At some point in this country, the sanctity of American lives and children's lives has to outweigh the sanctity of American guns. Alexa?
Given the violence we saw this past weekend, really overall, do you still have confidence Commissioner Harrison can effectively lead the department and reduce crime in the city? Commissioner
Harrison is our police commissioner. Alexa, point blank, period, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But to your second point, I think it would be interesting for you to note this. As you know, on when February the 1st started, our city was up 25% in homicides. When May started, we were up 13% in homicides. As of you and I talking right now, we're up 1.5%. At the beginning of May, our non-fatal shootings were up 20%. as you and I are talking right now, we're up 6%. So even with that progress, I want us to keep going and have more so that we're in the negative, and that's what we're going to do each and every day, working with the police commissioner, working with our federal partners, working with our state partners, working with the community each and every day.
Where is he? Where is he?
Well, I think it's very public that the police chiefs, many police chiefs in the country are at this major city police chiefs conference in San Francisco. So he's out there with his counterparts, as mayors do, as journalists do. They're all getting together to talk about how they can work better together. Yes.
Mayor, a question possibly for the Deputy Commissioner. Baltimore City residents appear to be fighting back as crime is rampant. And just last week alone, reportedly a community beat up and held down a suspect until police got there to arrest her. And then yesterday there was an armed robbery in a store in northeast Baltimore. And the employees intervened until the police arrived. Can we get your thoughts and possibly deputies involved?
Well, I'll just say that that to me is nothing new. We've seen that happen in Baltimore many times, and people are doing what people should do, and they're able to do that situation. If someone is coming in and trying to harm you and your coworker, and you have the ability to intercede in that and keep yourself safe in any way, then people are going to do that. If people see someone get shot, like, these are the things that we ask people to do. Get up, get involved, help us out. And we want our police to be doing that. We want our residents to be safe. We don't want them putting themselves at risk. But we also understand that this is Baltimore, and people take pride in their communities and their business and the places that they work.
We know that
Last question.
We know that so many guns are trafficked to Baltimore illegally from out of state, and so we have some neighbors like DC with similar lawsuits, but others like Virginia, as far as I know, have not enacted similar lawsuits. What conversations are you having with our neighbors who are just interested in pursuing this lawsuit against ghost gun manufacturers?
Well, these kind of conversations are happening with mayors across the country. Again, we're going to continue to push these things on our federal partners at the congressional level. There are things that we know are pending right now, like we should have a ATF director. There's laws that are sitting there pending that they should approve right now that can help across this country. But we're never going to stop. This is just one thing that we're going to be trying to do in a coordinated effort with mayors and leaders around the country to have this impact, because mayors are no longer going to sit by and wait for things to happen, because hey, I was in 9th grade when Columbine happened, and what's changed since then?
Mayor,
Thank you.
This lawsuit is going to take, assumingly, years to go through. There are laws on the books right now in the city and across the state that aren't being enforced when it comes to gun violence. Are you?
Which laws are not being enforced?
We're seeing crimes not being enforced in the city.
Which gun? You said in reference to gun violence. You said gun violence. Which gun law is not being enforced? Please tell me.
When we talk about crimes that escalate, though, we know that some low-level crimes escalate.
You said gun violence. So tell me one gun crime that's not being enforced. There isn't none. Thank you.